everybody. I'm Jacqueline Shen. I'm your instructor today. Very honored to be your instructor. And I am going to deliver a presentation on the topic of the current sports world order. Okay, why do I choose this topic? I choose this topic because what happened in the world in the first half of 2020. We experienced a very big pandemic, as we all know, the COVID-19 spread, which has spread throughout the world. And what the consequence of that pandemic is also well known to everybody. Like the pandemic up to today has claimed more than 400,000 lives and has contacted at least 8 million people in the world and causing such havoc around the world. However, the economic system and the public health system and the social system in many of the states, many of the nations have been upset. The sports world is no exemption. There is a lot of effect of the pandemic on the sports world. It's not only that you cannot go to see the NBA games or watch the MLB on TV or even go to the venue side to cheer for the European football league players. It's not just that. The effect goes far beyond just not being able to watch the games or to enjoy a match with your friends. It's such an upsetting, it has such an upsetting result that the entire order has been altered. Why do I say that? Because at the center of everything is the Olympic Games. The center of the sports world, we have the Olympic Games. And as we all know, as a result of the pandemic, the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Summer Games has been postponed. So it is, well, we would say that it's postponed, so what? It doesn't really matter, just 1 year late. But it is really not simple as that. The sports world order has been altered, has been changed because of the postponement. And many of the arrangements would have to be rearranged. So the pandemic damage in the sports world affects one country mainly, Japan. Let me just explain to you why is it so important that the Tokyo 2020 Summer Olympics should do to Japan, to the Japanese society and the Japanese economy. And let's go back, because this is the second time Japan is holding the Summer Olympics. The last time was in 1964. So in 1964, the Japanese held the first Summer Olympics in Asia ever. It was in the 1964 when the Olympic opens in Tokyo on October 10th, 1964. It was only 19 years after the Second World War. The Second World War ended 19 years before that, when Japan was in shambles, when Japan was war devastated. And then in 19 years, they rebuilt the nation. And so the 1964 Olympic Games was a show of force, was a show of recovery for Japan. Japan showed to the rest of the world that it has not only recovered from the war damages, but it has also emerged as a new power on the international stage. So we go back to 1964 and look at the opening ceremony, okay? There were several achievements that Japan presented to the world through the Summer Olympics. Let's look at the torch, okay? This was a cauldron. The torch was still using gas torch at that time. So then this boy, this athlete who lighted the torch was a 19-year-old athletic player. So he was chosen not because he was a world champion or whatever. He was chosen because he was born in the year of 1945, the year the World War II ended. But he was chosen not only because he was born in that year, Nakashima, and he was born 15 days after the atomic bomb was dropped in Yokohama and Nakashima. So his lighting up the cauldron, the Olympic flame, was a symbol to remind the Japanese that they have suffered, but yet they have recovered from the disaster, from the damages of the Second World War. And there was also a show of power, a show of strength, a show of economic confidence, because we see the Tokyo Tower. It was built also for the Olympics, for the transmission of television signals. Okay, this is the Tokyo Tower, and connecting the Tokyo Tower were transatlantic cables. The cables were installed for satellite transmission of the Olympic Games at that time. It was the first time ever that the signals of Olympics was transmitted across the Asian continent to the rest of the world. So it was an accomplishment. And Japan also built, this is the bullet train at that time. They built the world's first fast train, the bullet train. So this was considered a great achievement for Japan. And Japan showed its fast, speedy recovery from the war, and it showed that it has developed its economy, and it has emerged to become an epitome of Asian strength and Asian powers. So let's go to, and then why does Japan want to stage a second Olympic Games some 35 years later? Let's just take a look, okay, at the CIS of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games, and we will understand the drive, the motivation behind it. In the past 20 years, Japan has experienced an economic downturn. The economy grew very rapidly, but at the turn of the 21st century, Japan's economy started to experience a downward trend. So they call it the lost generation of 20 years, because they no longer experience the boom, the growth that they enjoyed in the 20th century. So, and then later they experienced the big earthquake and the nuclear power plant explosion, and they suffer a lot from those natural disasters. And so they have an aging population. So everything was becoming very, very grim. They had a very, very gloomy picture in Japan. And the government thought that they needed a booster, they needed a cheer up in order to present to the Japanese people a brighter future, a future, a vision of hope. And the Olympics could serve to do that, as it has done before in 1964. So let's just look at the CIS to understand the hope, the visions, the wishes attached to the staging of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. Okay, let's go back to the CIS. We can see on the left-hand side of the screen is the emblem of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. And it is consisted of triangles, it's consisted of squares and rectangles of different shapes, signifying that all all different countries, all different cultures, all different ideas converge and melted together in the sports arena. So it signifies cooperation, collaboration, and this run of international integration. And in the middle, we can see United by Emotion. That's the slogan of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. So the organizing committee hopes to unite the world with good emotions, positive emotions. And on the right-hand side, this cute little energetic little figurine is the mascot of the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. And it has a Japanese name of Miratowa. Actually, Miratowa are two separate words. Mira means the future, and Towa in Japanese means forever. So together, when you put these two words together, Mira, Towa means Tokyo 2020 will bring the Japanese and the world to strive together towards a better and a brighter future. That's what this entire CIS stands for, expresses the hope, the wish of the Japanese government and the society to break away from all the past shadows, the past adversities, and strive together with the rest of the world towards a brighter future. So but then the hope was shattered this year because of the pandemic. In January, the COVID-19 pandemic started to spread throughout the world, but the Japanese government and the Japanese people were determined to stage the Tokyo Olympic Games on July 24, throughout August 9 this year, because they do not want a delay to shatter their hopes. They do not anticipate cancellation. They know the economic impacts it will have on their economy, and they want to reap the seeds, the fruits of the Olympic Games, which I will talk about later. But unfortunately, because of the spread of the pandemic, on July 18, the President of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, and the Prime Minister of Japan, Abe Shinzo, they announced on March 24 that the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games will be postponed until 2021. And then 1 week later, they set the new dates. So the Tokyo 20 Olympic Games will be held on July 23rd through August 8th, 2021. And such unfortunate development is really very, very damaging to the Japanese wishes. The postponement of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games was not only due to the fact that Japan was not able to contain the spread of coronavirus in its country. The reasons are many-folded. As we understand that before the postponement, a few countries had voiced concern over the safety of staging the Olympics as scheduled, like Canada and Australia. And then, as the spread of the coronavirus was not able to be contained, so there were many, many countries that were on the quarantine list. Very few National Olympic Committees, NOCs, can afford to pay for the quarantines if they send their athletes to compete in Japan. And then on top of the quarantines, the airfare has skyrocketed. Not many countries can afford to travel to Japan on very, very high airfares. So it's a very, very difficult and very, very complicated situation. And also because as a common practice, prior to the games or after before the games or during the games, many countries have a common practice of sending their athletes to compete to be trained in a foreign country with better coaching and better equipment. But with the pandemic, that becomes impossible. And take China, for instance. The outbreak first started in China. So in the beginning of the outbreak, they had athletes training in other countries, and they had athletes competing in other countries. So the NOC, the Chinese NOC, decided the best thing, the best practice was to keep their athletes outside of their borders, not ask them to stay in the countries they were trained or stay in the countries that they competed. And that was a very huge cost. And then they would also send their athletes to countries where they think are safe for training. But as the coronavirus, as the pandemic progressed, China became a very controlled state in terms of coronavirus quarantine and all the inspection and all the treatment. And the cases went down and after the lockdown. So China became a relatively safe place for their athletes. Then China had to call, they changed their policy. Instead of sending out their athletes, they call in all the athletes, recall them back to be locked down within China. So that they were not there. If comes July, or they were, even before July, they were not there to send their athletes to train in other countries. And comes July 24, they will not dare send their athletes to compete in Tokyo Olympics because the athletes and the coaches and the whole delegation will be staying at the athletes' village. The athletes' village is a highly concentrated complex, then the very, very good breeding ground for virus. So due to these considerations, the IOC and the Tokyo Olympic Committee and the organizing committee had to make the painful decision to postpone the games for 1 year. Even if in 2021, the organizing committee is still worried that if the world pandemic cannot be contained by that time, they're still not sure if the Olympics, the Tokyo 20 Olympic Games can go on as scheduled on July 23rd. So with so many question marks in the air, they are not certain that we will have Olympic Games next year. So not having the Olympic Games this year, by delaying it this year, has such great economic impact for Tokyo, for Japan, even for the IOC, for many, many stakeholders. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the stakes involving for the hosting country and the IOC. Okay, postponing for 1 year means losing $640.8 billion to 700 billion yen for Japan alone. So that would be equivalent to 5.42 billion to 6.32 billion US dollars for loss for the Japanese government. Now, on top of that, there will be a 930 million US dollars loss because they've already spent so much money on building infrastructure, including improving their transportation system, including updating equipment and even building some of the new venues. And it also means a loss of 26 to 28 billion US dollars in the money already spent on organizing the event. And so if it's for the postponement alone, okay, That's for up-to-date expenditure. But for future expenditure, for future losses, if the games is postponed for 1 year, delayed for 1 year, it means the organizing committee would spend $20.9 million for the maintenance of the venues or the equipment. Another $362 million for related groups to keep them in place, to keep them open, because there are many, many groups related to the Olympic Games that the Japanese government will have to come up with the money to keep the organizations related to the games open and operating in order to accommodate to the games in the year 2020. And then there will be post-Olympics. After the Olympics, it will be to round up, the roundup cost would cost another $2.02 billion. That's a lot of money. And there's also the canceling costs. The canceling costs for, they have the venue sites, they have all the facilities, and they have the convention centers, they have the hotels booked, they have a lot of civic centers and all the facilities related to staging the Olympic Games, because the Olympic Games is not only just about competition matches. It's also about the exchange of culture, education. So there's so many activities related to the Olympic Games, and they require venues, they require exhibition centers, and these all have been booked, and the cancellation costs for all these will amount to $41.85 billion. That's a lot of money involved, and it's just such a heavy loss, such a heavy blow to the economy. And aside from the organizing committee part, there are stakeholders, other stakeholders. For instance, the television industry. The American broadcaster NBC already paid the IOC $4.38 billion for broadcast rights. So how do they do, for not being able to broadcast the games this year? So the IOC would really have to sit down with NBC to calculate how to share the loss, okay? And this is not something you can carry into the next year, because all the commercials have been booked and all the sponsorship have been lined up. So it is a very, very messy situation here with the broadcaster. And also for the Tokyo Organizing Committee, there were sponsorships already lined up. For instance, Japanese companies such as Toyota, Bridgestone, NEC, Canon, Panasonic have already invested $3 billion into organizing the games, staging and preparation for the games. So if they go into the next year, it probably means just as much as another $3 billion will be spent. So, and this is wasted. And there's so many other related aspects concerning the sponsorship. For instance, these are all called blue chip companies. Okay, Toyota, Bridgestone, Canon, Panasonic, they're all called blue chip companies. And their stock market value would depreciate. The market value of these companies would experience another downturn even amidst the pandemic. And also, Tokyo 2020 the organizing committee is expecting a $7.8 million sale of venue tickets, competition tickets, opening ceremony tickets, closing ceremony tickets, and all that, and half of the tickets have been sold already. So the organizing committee is also tangling with the public, and they have many audience from around the world purchased tickets already, booked hotels already. So the 7.8 million US dollars ticket loss is really a big blow to the Japanese economy. And also the events, there are dance events, there's concert events, all related or celebrating or scheduled to celebrate the Olympic Games. They're all canceled, and many event organizers have already put a lot of money into bookings, to secure bookings for the event sites. So that money is lost. And can they continue? Can they talk to the venue operators and say we continue into 2021? Not very likely, because in 2021 these venue sites have already other bookings. So it's a very messy and very grave situation. And then Japan expected a huge boom of tourism, a huge surge of tourism during 2020 Tokyo Olympics Games. And the amount was estimated at 550 billion yen for incoming and domestic consumers, domestic tourists, international tourists, and all that is gone for the year 2020. And also another big headache for the Japanese or for the Tokyo Prefecture government is the athletic village was scheduled to be turned into condominiums to be sold to the public. There are 440 some units built in the athletes village as individual condos. And the Japanese, the Tokyo Prefecture government has already started to sell these condos and have sold, like, there are already 900 units have been sold of 4,415 units. 900 have already been sold. So, and they were scheduled to move in the year 2023. So with the postponement, many families are really quite grievous about the condo that they purchased, and yet they will not be able to use and move in. And this is a very big, huge blow on the Japanese economy. However, outside of Japan, okay, the games postponement actually has an effect, an impact, bigger, much beyond Japan, much beyond the economy of Japan. It also affects everybody in the sports world, because the world of sports revolves around the Olympic Games in a 4-year cycle. Okay, Winter Olympic Games and Summer Olympic Games, especially the Summer Olympic Games, is the epicenter of all sporting activities around the world. So the cancellation of the postponement of Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games means that all the qualifying and all the testing competitions for the Olympic Games would have to be rescheduled, canceled and rescheduled. And then it means that all the international federations are squandering to reschedule their own competition, their own qualifying and competition schedules. all the way into the year 2024. And the other games related or that were arranged at the intervals of those competitions, those World Cup, those championships will also have to be altered, have to be changed. So the order of the sports world is totally disturbed and upset. Let's look at how the postponement can do or has done to the order of the international competition schedules. So all the games have been rescheduled. Okay, this year we still have the third Winter Youth Olympic Games. We had it. Okay, it's already, luckily it started in the very early part of 2020. And then the next game remaining that is scheduled, that is still on the schedule this year, is the 6th Asian Beach Games, scheduled for Sanya, China. And China has not been able to determine whether it will be postponed or not, because the situation in China is not contained. The situation in the rest of the world is worse. So Chinese Olympic Committee has not been able to decide whether this November event will go on schedule. Then so this beach game, Asian Beach Game, is still at stake. And for the year 2021, okay, the 6th Asian Indoor and Martial Art Games is rescheduled for May 21st to May 30th. And then we have, we have the main character, we have the Epic Center, the 32nd Summer Olympic Games, as we said before. It's rescheduled for July 23rd throughout August 8th. And then we have in November 2021, the 4th Asian Youth Games scheduled for Shantou, China. Well, as I mentioned before, the organizing committee of the Summer Olympic Games, Tokyo Summer Olympic Games, is still hesitant. They are not sure if this game can be held, or if it's not going to be held, there will not be another postponement. It will be canceled totally. It will be the first ever postponed and then canceled Olympic Games in the history of the Olympic Games. Actually, there have been several cancellations of Olympic Games, all because of World War I and World War II. Nothing because of pandemic or anything outside of wars and battles. Okay. For the year 2022, we have 4 games scheduled: the 24th Winter Olympic Games, the 11th World Games, and the 19th Asian Games, and the 4th Youth Olympic Games. Then for the year 2023, we have the Ioc, the 2nd Ioc World Beach Games, with the site undetermined yet, to be decided. The first was held in Qatar, and then we have the 2nd East Asian Youth Games scheduled, and it was originally, the first one was supposed to be held in Taichung, but it was canceled for political reasons. And the second one is scheduled for 2023. That's far off, so that's still safe so far. Scheduled to take place in Mongolia. And looking into the world 2024, okay, we have the 4th Winter Youth Olympic Games, and then we have in July the 33rd Summer Olympic Games. Okay, this is far off, so far it's still safe. I will talk about Paris Games a little bit later. And then we have the 7th Asian Beach Games. It's the dates and and the site decided. Anyway, this is a completely new schedule because the old one has been scrapped, no longer applicable, no longer no longer existing. So the sporting world order has been completely altered and changed because of the postponement of the Summer Olympic Games. It is a very, very pathetic situation. Now, I would also like to talk about some changes in the international body of the International Olympic Committee, which is also the epicenter of all the sporting activities and sporting movements. And let me start by giving you an inside look of the International Olympic Organization. The organization has 115 members and currently has only 105 because some resigned and some died. So the members consist of different disciplines and different professions and different levels, different sectors of life. Okay. So the organization is structured like this. They have everything is run by the executive board committee, the executive board, with 15 board members, and they're all elected. And out of the 15 EB board members, they elect 4 vice presidents and 1 president, and the president is Thomas Bach, a German, ex-Olympian, 2-time Olympic fencing champions, gold medalist. So Thomas Bach is a sports person. Then he later became a lawyer, and he became president of International Olympic Committee through election in 2014. So this is his 2nd term. Now, I would also like to explain to you about the IOC member composition. Okay, out of the 115 IOC members, there are 70 individual members, and there are 15 athletes representatives, and elected among athletes of the world, elected among Olympian athletes. Okay, and there are 15 sports federation representatives. By sports federation, we mean Olympic sports, such as basketball, swimming, athletics, archery, shooting, and all the Olympic sports organizations. They form their sports federations, and they elect among them 15 representatives to sit in the IOC for them. And also, there are 15 NOC representatives. By NOC, we mean a National Olympic Committee like Chinese Taipei Olympic Committee, or American or Japan. The national Olympic committees will elect. Actually, they have been selected, not elected. They have been selected by the IOC EB board to represent all the NOCs in the world. So this is a composition of the International Olympic Committee. And okay, recently there has been changes and reshuffle in the International Olympic Committee, and I will tell you I will explain the reason later. Now, this new order is caused because of the elections and the addition of new members to the International Olympic Committee. Recently, the IOC Executive Board just passed the nomination of 5 individuals who will run for IOC seats. They are these 5 individuals, and notably, you can see that there's a princess, Okay, a princess from Saudi Arabia. There's a diplomat from Croatia, and there's also a very, very well-known ex-athlete, and who is the president of IAAF, International Athletic Federation. Okay, so they represent different disciplines, different professionals, different walks of life, and this is a very, very exemplary of the composition of the nature of the members of the International Olympic Committee. Okay, and only two of them are, I'm sorry, only 3 of them are from the athletic field, and we have a nobility here. And so the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, is consisted of many presidents, many statesmen, many diplomats, and also royalties. This is the very, very distinctive nature of the International Olympic Committee, that you have to be either famous in the sports world, or you have to be very rich like the royalties, or you have to be very powerful in your own country or in your communities. So let's go on. Among the ranks of the existing IOC members, we had one representative, Mr. C.K. Wu, among the ranks of IOC members. But unfortunately, on March 18, 2020, he announced his resignation from the IOC. And let's take a look at why C.K. Wu was a member, or how did he become a member of the IOC committee. As I said, that you have to be either to be famous or powerful or very rich to get into the ranks, to be accepted by IOC as a member, because they have to go through election. And Mr. C.K. Wu was he's an architect. He started involved in the Olympic business or the sports world back in 1981, and he was selected to be cultivated as a candidate for IOC membership by Henry Shi, our former IOC member, okay, for the Republic of China. And Henry Shi trained and cultivated Mr. C.K. Wu because you have to be, as an outsider, you have to get into the nucleus center. You have to have many years of association, many years of joint activities with members of the IOC family. It's a very close-in family. So Mr. Henry Shi was a member of that family, was a very, very famous well-known part of that family for many years. And so he used his personal connections to introduce Mr. Wu and took Mr. Wu with him for many, many years. And from 1981 on to 1988, then when Mr. Henry Shi retired, Mr. Wu, C.K. Wu, was able to be accepted as his successor, but he had to go through an election. So in 1988, he was elected a member to succeed Mr. Shi and to fill up his seat. But with the resignation of Mr. Wu this year, there is a very dim chance of the Republic of China dispatching a replacement for Mr. Wu, because the time is lost for cultivating his successor. although he was AIBA, the International Boxing Association president, he was president of AIBA, he was also elected as member of the executive board. And yet, with his resignation, okay, we don't have a place. We don't have a slot. We don't have a person to speak for the interests of the Republic of China or Taiwan in the IOC. So we will have a missing piece in the entire Olympic family map. Why is it so difficult, say, if that we can find a replacement, or we can ask Mr. Wu to nominate a replacement for him? As I mentioned before, the IOC membership has to go through an electoral process. Let's look at the IOC member election process. First of all, you have to secure endorsement from at least 3 members of the committee. And then your nomination has to be screened and then nominated by the nomination commission of the International Olympic Committee, which is chaired by Princess Anne of Britain now. Okay. Then once the approval, okay, it has to be approved by the executive board. And then with the approval of the executive board, the list of nominees will be presented to the general session or the plenary session of the IOC. That's held every year. So this year, in July this year, the 5 nominees will be voted by the session, by the IOC session. And each nominee will have to secure more than half of the votes to have his nomination passed. So it's a very long process, but then the process does not start here. It starts many years ago, because it's an inbreed society, because you have to be either to be friend to this member, you have to be to be a part of a group, you have to have very connection, which takes years and years to cultivate, to nurture within the IOC. So it is, okay, the new order for us is a very sad reality that time is lost. We probably don't have enough time to cultivate, to nurture a successor to Mr. C.K. Wu. So this is a new situation, a new reality for us. Then I would also like to talk about IOC's new policy. Okay, when Thomas Bach was elected president of IOC in the year 2014, he came up with a proposal to reform the IOC. To reform the IOC means to reform the entire sports world, because all the sporting activities revolve around the IOC. The Summer Olympics, the Winter Olympics, and the other World Games or the Universiade. These are all peripheral. They revolve around the Olympic activities of the Olympic family. So when Thomas Bach became president of IOC, he came up with a proposal called the Olympic Agenda 2020. Okay, it was a strategic roadmap for the future of the Olympic movement. The Olympic movement means the movement and the activities of the entire sports world. So meaning it's a strategic roadmap to reshape, to rearrange, to reorganize the future sports world. Let's look at the content. The IOC declared in the very beginning that the purpose, okay, is the implementation of, they secure 40 recommendations from all the Olympic families. And then took them to the session, and it was approved in 2014. The 40 recommendations laid out the roadmap or the future plan, the blueprint for the future of the Olympic movement. So in the proposal of the Olympic Agenda 2020, which it's been 5 years. It's been 5 years since the proposal or the implementation of the Olympic Agenda 2020. A lot of proposals have been realized, have been facilitated, but we still look at the 3 different directions that those proposals were made in: sustainability, credibility, and youth. And then the IOC carried out 40 recommendations, okay, involving the legal system, the finance organization, the human resources, and other aspects for conducting the concept of games legacy, okay, with one purpose of reducing financial burden and for moving towards sustainable development of all the games facilities